Welcome to another immersive audio journey where ordinary lives often meet the extraordinary. Today, we delve into the mind of a man who defies convention, a man whose oddities blur the line between madness and genius. This is a tale written by the legendary Satyajit Roy, known for weaving suspense into the fabric of everyday life. The story is titled The Eccentric. So close your eyes, let your imagination take over as we step into the world of the bizarre, the curious, and the unexpected. I never managed to find out Mr. Eccentric's full name. All I did learn was that his surname was Mukherjee. His appearance was quite unforgettable. He was nearly 6 feet tall, his body was without the slightest trace of fat. His back arched like a bow, and his neck, arms, hands, and forehead were covered by innumerable veins that appeared to be bulging out of his skin. What he wore almost every day was a white shirt with black flannel trousers, white socks, and white tennis shoes. And he always carried a stout walking stick. Perhaps he needed it because he often walked on uneven, unpaved roads and amongst wild plants. I met Mr. Eccentric 10 years ago, when I used to work for a bank. That year, I had taken 10 days off in early May and gone to Darjeeling, my favorite hill town, for a holiday. I saw Mr. Eccentric on my very first day. At about 4:30, I had left my hotel for a walk after a cup of tea. In the afternoon, there had been a short shower. Since there was every chance that it might rain again, I had put my raincoat before stepping out. As I was walking down Jalapahar Road, the most picturesque and quiet road in Darjeeling, I suddenly spotted a man about 50 yards away. He was standing where the road curved. His body was bent forward, and he was leaning on his walking stick, gazing intently at the grass by the roadside. At first, none of this struck me as unusual. Perhaps he was interested in some wild flowers or insect. Perhaps he had seen one of those in the grass. I cast a mildly curious glance at his direction and kept on walking. As I got closer, however, I realized that there was something odd about him. It was the intensity of the man's concentration. I was standing only a few feet away, staring at him, but he did not appear to have noticed me at all. He was still bent over the grass, his eyes fixed on it. Now I could not help asking a question. "Have you lost something?" There was no reply. Was he deaf? My curiosity rose. I was determined to see what happened next. So I lit a cigarette and waited. About 3 minutes later, life seemed to return the man's limbs. He bent further forward and stretched an arm out towards the grass. Then he pushes his finger into the thick grass and a second later withdrew his hand. Between his thumb and index finger was held a small disc. I peered carefully at it. It was a button, nearly as large as a 50 paisa coin. Perhaps it had once been attached to a jacket. The man brought the button closer to his eyes, scrutinized it thoroughly, turned it around several times, then said, "Cha cha cha," regretfully, before placing it in his shirt pocket and striding off in the direction of the mall. He ignored me completely. Later in the evening, on my way back to the hotel, I ran into an old resident of Darjeeling, Dr. Bhomik. He was standing by the fountain on the mall. Dr. Bhomik was my father's classmate and very fond of me. I couldn't help telling him about my encounter with the strange man. When I finished my tale, Dr. Bhomik said,
Well, from your description, it appears that you met Mr. Eccentric.
Mr. Who?
Eccentric. It's a sad case, really. I can't remember his first name. His surname is Mukherjee. He has been in Darjeeling for nearly 5 years. He rents a room in a cottage near Greenlays Bank. Before he came here, he used to teach physics in Ravenshaw College in Cuttack. I believe he was once a brilliant student and has a German degree in physics. But he left his job and came here to live. Perhaps he inherited some property or has some private income, so he gets by.
Do you know him?
He came to me once, soon after he got here. He had stumbled and fallen somewhere and cut his knees. It had turned septic. I treated him and he recovered.
But why is he called Eccentric? Dr. Bhomik burst out laughing.
He acquired that name because of his peculiar hobby. I couldn't tell you who was the first to think of that name.
What's his hobby?
You saw it yourself, didn't you? He picked up a button from the roadside and put it in his pocket. That's his hobby. He'll pick up any old thing and keep it safe in his room.
Any old thing? How do you mean? For some reason, I began feeling increasingly curious about the man.
Well,
said Dr. Bhomik,
I call it that. But he claims that every object in his collection is most precious. Apparently, there is a story behind all of them.
How does he know that? Dr. Bhomik glanced at his watch.
Why don't you ask him yourself?
He suggested.
He is always pleased to have a visitor, for his stories are endless. All of it is pure nonsense, needless to say, but he is always glad to tell them. Mind you, whether you will be glad to hear them or not is a different matter.
The following morning, I left my hotel soon after breakfast and went looking for Mr. Eccentric's house. It proved quite easy to find it, since most people near Greenlays Bank seemed to know where he lived. I knocked on the door of house number 17. The man himself answered the door almost at once and, to my astonishment, recognized me immediately.
You asked me something yesterday, didn't you? But I couldn't reply. Believe me, I just couldn't speak. At a time like that, if I let my attention wander, it can spell disaster. Do come in.
The first thing I noticed on entering his room was a glass case. It covered a large portion of a wall. On each shelf was displayed a range of very ordinary objects, not one of which seemed to bear any relationship to the other. One shelf, for instance, had a root of some plant, a rusted padlock, an ancient tin of gold flake cigarettes, a knitting needle, a shoe brush, and old torch cells. The man caught me staring at these objects and said,
None of those things will give you any joy, since only I know what they are worth.
I believe there is a story behind everything in your collection.
Yes, there certainly is.
But that is true of most things, isn't it? Say, if you consider that watch you are wearing, I began, but the man raised a hand and stopped me.
Yes, there may be a special incident related to many things,
he said.
But how many of those things would continue to carry memories of the past, of the scene they have witnessed? Only very rarely would you find anything like that. This button that I found yesterday, for example.
The button in question was placed on a writing desk on the opposite end of the room. Mr. Eccentric picked it up and handed it to me. It was a brown button clearly torn from a jacket. I could see nothing special in it.
Can you see anything?
He asked. I was obliged to admit that I could not. My Eccentric began speaking.
That button came from the jacket of an Englishman. He was riding down Jalapahar Road. The man was almost 60, dressed in riding clothes, hale and hearty, a military man. When he reached the spot where I found that button, he had a stroke and fell from his horse. 2 passers-by saw him and rushed to help, but he was already dead. That button came off his jacket as he fell from his horse.
Did you see this happen yesterday? I mean, all these past events?
Vividly. The more I concentrate, the better do I see.
When can you see such things?
Whenever I come across an object that has its special power to take me back to the past. It starts with a headache, then my vision blurs and I feel faint. Sometimes I feel as if I need support, or else I'd fall down. But almost immediately, various scenes start flashing before my eyes, and my legs become steady once more. When the whole thing is over, my temperature rises. Every time. Last night, until 8 o'clock, it was nearly 102. But the fever does not last for more than a few hours. Today I feel absolutely fine.
Everything he said sounded far too exaggerated, but I felt quite amused. Can you give me a few more examples? I asked.
That glass case is packed with examples. See that notebook? It contains a detailed description of every incident. Which one would you like to hear?
Before I could say anything, he strode over to the glass case and lifted two objects out of it. One was a very old leather glove. The other was a spectacle lens. He placed them on the table.
This glove,
He told me.
is the first thing I found. It is the first item in my collection. Do you know where I found it? In a wood outside Lucerne in Switzerland. By then, I had finished my studies in Marburg and was touring the continent before coming back to India. That day, I was out on a morning walk. A quiet and secluded path ran through the wood. After a while, I felt a little tired and sat down on a bench. Almost immediately, my eyes caught sight of only a portion of that glove sticking out from the undergrowth near the trunk of a tree. At once, my head started throbbing, then my vision blurred, and then I could see it all. It was like watching a film. A well-dressed gentleman, possibly an aristocrat, was walking down the same path. In his mouth was a swish pipe. On his hand were leather gloves, and he was carrying a walking stick. Suddenly, two men jumped out from behind a bush and attacked him. The gentleman tried to fight them, and in the struggle, the gloves on his right hand came off. Those criminals then grabbed him, killed him mercilessly, and looted what money they could find in his pocket and took his gold watch.
Did something like that really happen?
I had to spend 3 days in hospital. I had fever and was delirious. There were other complications too. The doctors there could not make a diagnosis, but a few days later I recovered as if by magic. After leaving the hospital, I started making inquiries. Eventually, I learned that 2 years earlier, a wealthy man called Count Ferdinand was killed at the same spot, exactly as I had seen it. His son recognized the glove.
The man told his story so easily and naturally that I found it hard not to believe him. Did you start building up your collections from that time? I asked.
Well, nothing happened for 10 years after that first incident. By then I had returned home and was teaching in a college in Cuttack. Sometimes I went on holidays. Once I went to Voltaire. That's when the second incident took place. I found this lens stuck behind rocks on the bench. A South Indian gentleman had taken his glasses off to go and bathe in the sea. He never returned. He got cramps in his legs as he was swimming and drowned. I can still see him raising his hands from the water and shouting, "Help! Help!" It was heartbreaking. This lens, which I found 4 years after the incident, came off his glasses. Yes, what I saw was true. It was a well-known case of drowning, as I learned later. The dead man was called Shivaraman. He was from Coimbatore.
Mr. Eccentric replaced the two objects in the glass case and sat down.
Do you know how many items I have got in my collection? 172. I have collected them over 30 years. Have you ever heard of anyone with such a collection?
I shook my head. No, your hobby is unique. There is no doubt about that. But tell me, does each of those objects have something to do with death? The man looked grave.
Yes, so it seems. It isn't just death, but sudden or unnatural death, murder, suicide, death by accident, heart failure, things like that.
Did you find all those things simply lying by the roadside or on beaches and in woods?
Yes, most of them. The rest I found in auctions or antique shops. See that wine jug made of cut glass? I found it in an auction house in Russell Street in Calcutta. Sometime in the 19th century, wine served out of that jug was poisoned. An Englishman, oh, he was so tall and hefty, died in Calcutta after drinking that wine.
By this time, I had stopped looking at the glass case and was looking closely at the man. But I could find nothing in his expression to suggest that he was lying or that he was a cheat. Was he perhaps insane? No, that did not seem to be the case either. The look in his eyes did seem somewhat distant, but it was certainly not abnormal. Poets often had that look, or those who were deeply religious and spiritual. I did not stay much longer. As I said goodbye and started to step out from the room, the man said,
Please come again. My door is always open for people like you. Where are you staying?
The Alice Villa.
I see. That's only 10 minutes from here. I enjoyed meeting you. There are some people I just cannot stand. You appear to be sympathetic and understanding.
Dr. Bhumik had invited me to tea that evening. There were 2 other guests. Over a cup of tea and a plate of savories, I couldn't help raising the subject of Mr. Eccentric. Dr. Bhumik asked,
How long did you stay there?
About an hour.
My God.
Dr. Bhumik's eyes widened with amazement.
You spent nearly an hour listening to that fraud?
I smiled. Well, it was raining so much that I could hardly go out and enjoy myself elsewhere. Hearing his stories was more interesting than being cooped up in my hotel room.
Who are you talking about?
This question came from a man of about 40. Dr. Bhumik had introduced him to me as Mr. Khastagir. When Dr. Bhumik explained about Mr. Eccentric, Khastagir gave a re-smile and said,
Why have you allowed such people to come and live in Darjeeling, Dr. Bhumik? They do nothing but pollute the air.
Dr. Bhumik gave a slight smile.
Could the air of such a big place be polluted by just one man? I don't think so,
he remarked. The third guest was called Mr. Naskar. He proceeded to give a short lecture on the influence of frauds and cheats on our society. In the end, I was obliged to point out that Mr. Eccentric lived in such isolation that the chances of his society in Darjeeling being influenced by him were extremely remote. Dr. Bhumik had lived in Darjeeling for over 30 years. Khastagir was also an old resident. After a while, I just had to ask them a question. Did an Englishman ever suffer a heart attack while riding a horse on Jalapahar Road? Do you know of any such case?
Who? You mean Major Bradley?
Dr. Bhumik replied.
That happened about 8 years ago. He had a stroke. Yes, I think it happened on Jalapahar Road. He was brought to the local hospital. But by then, it was too late. Why do you ask?
I told them about the button Mr. Eccentric had found. Mr. Khastagir seemed outraged.
You mean that man told you this story and claimed that he had some supernatural powers? He appeared to be crook of the first order. Why, he spent a few years in Darjeeling, hasn't he? He could easily have heard of Bradley's death. What's supernatural about that?
To tell the truth, the same thought had already occurred to me. If Mr. Eccentric had heard the story from someone in Darjeeling, that was hardly surprising. I changed the subject. The next few minutes were spent discussing various other topics. When it was time for me to leave, Mr. Naskar rose to his feet as well. He had to go past my hotel, he said, so he wanted to walk back with me. We said goodbye to Dr. Bhumik and left. It had started to get dark. For the first time since my arrival in Darjeeling, I noticed that the thick clouds had parted here and there. Through the gaps, the light from the setting sun broke through the fell like a spotlight on the city and its surrounding mountains. Mr. Naskar had struck me as a man in good health, but now it became obvious that he was finding it hard to walk uphill. Nevertheless, between short gasps, he asked me,
Where does the eccentric live?
"Why, do you want to meet him?"
No, just curious.
I told him where Mr. Eccentric lived. Then I added, "The man goes out often for long walks. We might run into him, who knows?" Amazingly, only 2 minutes later, just as we reached a bend, I saw Mr. Eccentric coming from the opposite direction. In one hand, he was holding his heavy walking stick. In the other was a packet wrapped in newspaper. When he saw me, he did not smile, but then nor did he seem displeased.
There is something wrong with my electric supply,
He said.
so I came out to buy some candles.
Courtesy made me turn to Mr. Naskar. "This is Mr. Mukherjee and this is Mr. Naskar," I said, making introductions. Naskar turned out to be quite westernized. Instead of saying namaskar, he offered his hand. Mr. Eccentric shook it quietly, without saying a word. Then he appeared to turn into a statue and just stood there, rooted to the spot. Naskar and I both began to feel uncomfortable. After nearly half a minute, Naskar broke the silence.
Well, I had better be going.
He said,
I had heard about you, Mr. Mukherjee. Now, luckily, I have had the chance to meet you.
I had to say something too. "Goodbye, Mr. Mukherjee," I said, feeling somewhat foolish. Mr. Eccentric seemed truly insane. He was standing in the middle of the road, lost in thought. He did not appear to have heard us, nor did he see us leave. He might have taken a dislike to Naskar. But didn't he behave in a perfectly friendly fashion towards me only that morning? We left him behind and continued walking. After a few minutes, I turned my head and looked back. Mr. Eccentric was still standing where we had left him.
From what you told us, I thought the name Eccentric might be suitable.
Said Naskar.
But now I think it's a lot more than that.
It was 9 o'clock in the evening. I had just had my dinner, put a pan in my mouth, and was toying with the idea of going to bed with a detective novel when a bearer came and told me that someone was looking for me. I came out of my room and was most surprised to find Mr. Eccentric waiting for me. What was he doing in my hotel at 9 o'clock? He still looked a little dazed.
Is there anywhere we can sit and talk privately?
He asked.
I wouldn't mind talking to you outside, but it's raining.
I invited him into my room. He sat down, shied with relief, and said,
Could you feel my pulse, please?
I took his hand and gave a start. He was running a fairly high temperature. I have got anisin with me. Would you like one? I said, concerned. The man smiled.
No tablet is going to work now. This fever won't go down before tomorrow's morning. Then I'll be all right. But I am not worried about my temperature. I have not come to you looking for medical treatment. What I need is a ring.
Ring? What ring? The perplexed look on my face seemed to irritate Mr. Eccentric.
That man, Laskar or Tuskar, whatever his name is.
He said a little impatiently.
Didn't you see his ring? It's an ordinary cheap old ring, not set with stones or anything. But I want it.
Now I remember. Yes, Naskar did wear a silver ring on his right hand. Mr. Eccentric was still speaking.
When I shook his hand, I could feel that ring brush against my palm. Immediately, I felt as if my whole body would explode. Then the same old thing happened. I went into a trance and began watching the scene that rose before my eyes. But before the whole thing could finish, a jeep came from the opposite end and ruined everything.
So you didn't see the whole episode?
No, but what little I did see was bad enough. Let me tell you, it was a murder. I did not see the murderer's face. I only saw his hand moving towards to grasp his victim's neck. On his hand was that ring. The victim was wearing a Rajasthani cap, the glasses with a golden frame. His eyes were bulging. He had just opened his mouth to scream. One of his lower teeth had a gold filling. That's all I saw. I've got to have that ring.
I stared at Mr. Eccentric for a few seconds. Then I said, "Look, Mr. Mukherjee, if you want that ring, why don't you ask Mr. Naskar yourself? I don't know him all that well. Besides, I don't think he views your hobby with any sympathy. In that case, what good it would do if I ask him?"
It might be better if you...
"Very sorry, Mr. Mukherjee," I interrupted him, speaking plainly. "It wouldn't work even if I went and asked him. Some people are very attached to some of their possessions. Naskar may not wish to part with that ring. If it was something that he was not actually using every day, he might have..." I broke off. Mr. Eccentric did not waste another second. He shied, got to his feet, and left, disappearing into the dark, damp night. His demand was really weird, I thought of myself. It was one thing to pick up objects from the roadside, but to ask for something someone else was using, just to add one more item to his collection, was certainly wrong. No one could help him in this respect. Besides, Naskar did not appear to be a man with any imagination. He was stupid to expect him to understand and just give away his ring. The next morning, seeing that the clouds had dispersed and the day was bright, I left for a walk after a cup of tea. My aim was to go to Birch Hill. The mall was full of people. I had to walk carefully to avoid colliding with people on horseback and others walking on foot, like me. A few minutes later, I found myself in a relatively quiet road to the west of Observatory Hill. Mr. Eccentric's face kept coming back to me. If I ran into Naskar by chance, perhaps I would speak to him about that ring. It might not mean a great deal to him. He might not mind giving it to me. I could well imagine the look on Mr. Eccentric's face if I handed the ring over to him. When I was a child, I used to collect stamps, so I knew something about a collector's passion. Sometimes one's passion could turn into an obsession. Besides, Mr. Eccentric did not meddle with anyone. He was happy living alone with his crazy hobby. He was not trying to harm anyone else. And this was probably the first time that he was coveting someone else's possession, although it was nothing valuable. To tell the truth, I had come to the conclusion the previous night that Mr. Eccentric had no supernatural powers at all. His collection was based simply on his peculiar imagination. But if that brought him joy and contentment, why should anyone else object? I spent almost 2 hours walking near Birch Hill, but did not see Naskar. On my return through the mall, I had to pick my way through the crowd once again. However, this time many people in the crowd appeared agitated about something. Knots of people were scattered here and there, discussing something excitedly. As I got closer, I heard the words "police," "investigation," and "murder." I spotted an old gentleman in the crowd and decided to ask him what had happened.
"Oh, they say a suspected criminal fled from Calcutta and came here. The police followed his trail and are looking for him everywhere,"
the man told me.
"I couldn't tell you his real name. I believe he called himself Naskar."
My heart jumped into my mouth. There was only one person who could give me more information, Dr. Bhumik. As it happened, I did not have to go to his house. I ran into him and khastagid near a rickshaw stand.
"Just imagine,"
Dr. Bhumik exclaimed.
Only yesterday, the fellow came to my house and had a tea. He had come to me some time ago complaining a pain in his stomach. Said he was new to his city. So I treated him and thought I would introduce him to some other people.
That was only yesterday, for heaven's sake. And now this. Has he been arrested? I asked anxiously.
No, not yet. The police are looking for him. He is still in Darjeeling, so they will find him sooner or later. Never fear.
Dr. Bhomik left with Khastagir. My pulse started racing faster. It wasn't just that Naskar had turned out to be a criminal. That was amazing enough. But what about Mr. Eccentric? He did say that ring was worn by a murderer. Could it really be that he had some supernatural power after all? I had to go and see him. Had he heard the news about Naskar? I must find out. When I knocked on the door of house number 17, no one opened it. I tried again, with the same result. I could not really afford to wait outside, for the sky had become overcast again. So I left and walked briskly back to my hotel. Within half an hour, it began raining very heavily. The bright sunny morning had become a thing for the past. Where was Naskar hiding? Who had he killed? How had he killed? At 3:30, the manager of my hotel, Mr. Sodhi, gave me the news. The police had found the house where Naskar was staying. Right behind it was a deep gorge. In that gorge, Naskar's dead body had been discovered. His head was crushed. Various theories were being put forward, including suicide, momentary insanity, and falling to his death while trying to escape. Apparently, there had been some disagreement with his business partner. Naskar had murdered him, hid his body, and run away to Darjeeling. The police had eventually found the body in Calcutta and began looking for Naskar. Now I absolutely had to see Mr. Eccentric. I could no longer dismiss his words. Events in Switzerland and Voltaire might have been made up. He might have heard about Bradley's death in Darjeeling, but how did he know that Naskar was a murderer? Around 5 o'clock, the heavy rain settled into a drizzle. I left my hotel and went to Mr. Eccentric's house again. This time, the door opened immediately. Mr. Eccentric greeted me with a smile and said,
"Come in, my friend, come in. I was thinking of you."
I stepped in. It was almost dark. A single candle flickered on the table. There is no electricity, Mr. Eccentric explained with a wan smile.
They haven't yet reconnected the supply.
I took a cane chair, sat down and said, "Have you heard about your Tusker?"
I don't need to hear anything. I already know the whole story, but I am grateful to him.
Grateful? I felt most taken aback.
He has given me the most important item in my collection.
Given you? My throat suddenly felt dry.
There it is, on that table. Look.
I glanced at the table again. Next to the candle was the notebook, and placed on an open page was Mr. Naskar's ring. I was recording all the details.
Item number 173.
Mr. Eccentric said. A question kept bothering me. What do you mean? He gave it to you? When did he do that?
Well, naturally he didn't give it to me voluntarily. I had to use force.
Mr. Eccentric shied. This rendered me completely speechless. In the silence that followed, all I could hear was the clock ticking.
I'm glad you are here. I want to give you something. Keep it with you.
Mr. Eccentric rose and disappeared into a dark corner. I heard a faint clatter and then his voice.
This object is certainly worth keeping in my collection, but I cannot bear its effect on me. My temperature keeps shooting higher and a most unpleasant scene rises before my eyes. He emerged from the dark and stood near the candle once more. His right hand was stretched towards me. His fingers were curled around the old familiar heavy walking stick. Even in the faint light from the candle, I could tell that the red stain that covered the handle of that stick were nothing but the marks left by the dried blood.
That was The Eccentric, a story that makes us wonder, where do we draw the line between genius and absurdity? Satyajit Roy once again reminds us that the most unforgettable characters are not always the loudest, but often the strangest. If this story made you pause, think, or feel even a little unsettled, then its purpose is served. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to follow this series for more stories steeped in suspense, shadows, and the unexpected. Until next time, stay curious and keep listening. The Whisperer of Suspense.